r/AskReddit, nsfw, X-Cons of Reddit, what's the most terrifying thing you saw inside of prison? I saw someone take a hot pot, fill it up with baby oil, add a pound of sugar, add some magic shave, bring it to a boil, then splash it in a person's face. It literally melted the guy's face off. This happened around 1999 and I still have the occasional nightmare about it. Just the way that some people talk about murder. Some of the people in there would be telling a story, casually drop the fact that they killed someone, then keep going on with the story like nothing happened. Dude in the cell next to mine tried to kill himself with a sharpened pencil. He just kept stabbing himself in the chest but couldn't get deep enough. He was hauled off by cops, kicking and screaming, begging for death. He was going to be deported. A white kid get absolutely destroyed for accidentally sitting on the front bench of the TV area on his second day. They waited for rec, then started walking with him. Every lap they made, more guys would tag along. Then once in the blind spot they jumped him. 6 to 7 guys beating a 120-pound skinny little white kid. They were climbing up the fence and jumping down on his head. He was out within the first few seconds, but they kept on beating him until the cops gassed everyone. They snapped his lower back and he is now in a wheelchair. All for not knowing any better. The worst thing I've ever heard was a grown man being raped one night. He refused to pay a protection fee and 3 dudes raped him. They stabbed him in the ass with a toothbrush shank. I've seen some crazy shit, but theirs were the most memorable. Sometimes I have nightmares about the rape. I've never heard anything like that ever since. A guy got stomped to death my first day in. The 2 guys fighting were rival gang members. The guards didn't do anything until the guy getting stomped stopped breathing. Then they came in and took them both away. One in a bag and one in cuffs. A dude got 2 full kettles of boiling water poured on his head. And a convicted murderer explaining how he killed, dismembered with an angle grinder, then disposed of the body. I did a 4-month stint in Kajang, Malaysia. This Nigerian dude used to pilfer from other cells. This Malay gang found him and dipped his hand in boiling oil, basically deep fried it while it was still attached to him. That scream, it still curdles my blood. Poor guy was reduced to an unconscious pool of blood, sweat, tears, vomit, shit and piss. He lost more than his hand on that day. Okay, so unfortunately, my bunk was close to the corner where everybody came to fight or whatever. So this one guy claimed that he was a gang member, but it was discovered that he was a false flagger. So, the gang members put him in the corner and took turns beating and raping him. He was in the infirmary for about a week. When he came back, the gang got him all over again. He was transferred after that. I promise there aren't many things more terrifying than hearing a grown man scream while he's being raped. The violence was nothing compared to the people. The guy who taught me Scrabble beat his wife to death with a frying pan when she discovered his gambling debts. The guy who taught me poker tied up his employer in his house, and when the boss refused to give him the combo to his safe, the guy just burned the house down with his boss tied inside. I worked out with a guy who was caught with 2 arms and 1 leg in his trunk. He was in an Asian gang, had just performed a hit and was bringing the evidence back to his people for proof when he was pulled over. His co-defendant was snitching, so he spent literally all of his time working out to kill the guy the second he got the chance. Before I got shipped to prison, yeah, these were all county jail, he finally got his shot and essentially ripped the guy's face off in the middle of a hallway in front of guards. It was a huge fuck up on the cops' part, to the point where it was rumored it was the gang that paid to make sure the snitch died. You live with these people. Play cards, gamble, watch sports. If you're locked in your cell for a big game, you listen on your radios together and talk shit through the hatches in your doors. On Wednesdays your chicken quarter is gonna go towards a huge homemade meal for whoever wanted to chip in, and it's gonna be made by the 22-year-old Crip who's been charged with 9 separate murders and is seemingly the nicest person you'll ever meet. It's fucking wild, nothing makes sense and everything's dangerous. You're in this together, but at the same time everyone has all sorts of rage just ready to blow. I had an ag assault with a deadly weapon, as well as a separate case of unlawful possession of a firearm. So I had the pleasure of going to max units. Interestingly enough, the threat of constant danger actually helped things stay calm the vast majority of the time. Everyone's a killer, no one wants to be killed type vibes. I got stabbed with a Dixon pencil, but that was from Richard Busby, Mr. Tie my boss up and burn him alive. It was over a gambling debt he owed me. He's old and weak, I ultimately took twice what he owed me, and we were back at the table playing poker together that same day. Google his name if you'd like, I believe he just had an appeal denied or some shit. NJ Doc. Either you become one of them, or you live underneath them. And once you're one of them, they're surprisingly and frighteningly good-natured and decent to kill a few years' time with. My brother said a guy across from him had a new cellmate who had gastrointestinal problems and wouldn't stop farting these rancid horrible farts after the guy told him repeatedly to stop, not like he could help it, so the guy beat the farter to death in their cell with his bare hands. My brother said he had never seen so much blood from one person before. I was in a South American prison, there was a lot of drug addicts. They usually sold their food in order to buy more drugs, so they were always hungry. One day I was eating my lunch, rice, a leg of chicken and some beans. When I finished my meal there were some chicken bones left in my plate, and a drug addict approached to me to ask if I could gift him the chicken bones. So I lent him my bones and he started eating them. It was heartbreaking. I was never in prison, but in jail a bit for drug charges. I was in my 30s, but my bunkie was a really nice 19-year kid in there for selling drugs. He seemed a bit over his head, but introduced me to the jits. I didn't know anyone, and we'd play cards and shit. He had a real high bond, and one day they said to get his shit he got bail. He didn't know who, but I was so happy for him. The next morning the co told me he was shot and killed that night. Being very respectful, everyone liked the guy. It was confirmed on the evening news. Really fucked me up, and I can guess who got him bailed. Saw a dude get his head caved in his cell. A new inmate had come in and refused to show his papers. Another inmate came and said he was in court with him and he was a pedophile. Later that day, the keys, as we called them, told him he needed to roll his shit up, basically ask for protective custody. He refused. Later that night after we were all in our cells, his cellmate took a pencil and stabbed him in the eye. Then pulled him off his bunk and smashed his head against the wall till there was nothing left. Once he was done, he called the co over the intercom and let them handle everything. I could see this through our window as they were in the cell across from us. Edit, spelling, grammar. Edit 2, as some are asking about the keys, is an inmate leader in each unit. The prison had a car for each race, at each facility, also an inmate. They were the shot callers for the facility. Anything big went through them. There was a key for each race, in each unit, as the leader. They were the keys to the car as we called it. Nothing happened in the unit without the keys' approval, for each race. So if there was an incident, it would go through to the respective keys, and they would approve of any further action. Edit 3, another question being asked, papers, or pre-sentence investigation. These were provided prior to your sentencing, kind of like a discovery. It showed all prior crimes, pleas, deals, and snitching. The inmates used to receive these, but when the Department of Prisons learned what was happening, they quit giving them out. You could request them from the Department of Parole and Probation, but they don't even do that now. You were supposed to show these papers to your keys to prove you weren't a snitch, child molester, como, rapist, etc. Inmates being denied medical treatment until they are dead. I saw it twice. Both were diabetics, both elderly, neither had family support, and both had conditions exacerbated by the inhumane housing situation. In South Texas heat they lock up 56 men per dorm in poorly ventilated metal buildings. On lockdown they require you to stay in your bunk on a plastic mattress for weeks, only allowed a 5-minute shower every third day. I was 40 and in decent shape and I thought I might die there. In the afternoons the wall next to me was so hot I couldn't leave my hand on it. Shame on TDCJ and all of the employees. They put people in a terrible situation and we allow it to continue. If they treated dogs like that there would be pitchforks. End of rant. Here. Had a guy stick a full-size number 2 pencil in his leg, the long way, inserted into his thigh, and shoved it under the skin until you couldn't see it anymore. Took him to the hospital to have it removed. Days later, he did the same thing, in the same hole with a rubberized pencil. Rinse and repeat, hospital removes the pencil again. Couple days later, while on active suicide watch, he managed to jam part of a styrofoam cup, playing cards, and caulking from a cell window into his leg pocket. Took him to the OR, doctors pulled out another inch of wood pencil lead, and fragments of God knows what out of there. I don't even think he knew what all was in there. Edit, obviously major mental health concerns here. Hope he's doing okay now. Honestly most of it is the same type shit you run into in real life, gangbangers, thieves, drugs dealers, guys with anger management issues, etc. But the real problem is when you affiliate. That's what is going to keep you in prison doing worse. So I was in Lamenco. Closed custody, so 1 level below max. Mostly chill people but a lot of activity. The worst thing was they brought in a bus from Buena Vista. There was one kid, 23, nice kid, just got into Rex because he was short-tempered, so they bumped him up to close. He had 8 months left before he killed his number. He's been in the pod 3 days when an older Pisa sees him and says he snitched on him when they were in Adams County. So Pisa grabs 4 others and they jump the kid in his cell. They beat the dog shit out of him. And at the end they drug him out of his cell, propped his neck on the railing, and one big ass dude just smashed his neck with a kick and snapped it. Flight for IF comes but it's not going to help. All the guys catch a murder charge. But the fucked up part is the older Pisa yelled "fuck you Commons" when his neck snapped. Kid's name wasn't Commons. It was like Garcia. The Pisa had mistaken the kid for someone else. 8 months left. Kid was arrested at 17, 23 years old when he died. Never even saw the outside of a facility as an adult and killed in a case of mistaken identity. Prison could pop off like that. When I was 20 years old I thought I wanted to be a correctional officer. One night I was sent to work at the medical ward where each inmate had their own isolated cell where they were let out twice a day. That night I was going around with the nurse giving the inmates their medicine, and we came to one inmate's cell, and as soon as we opened the door I was knocked back by the most putrid smell I have ever smelled in my life. I've been to the dump plenty of times in my life and it was nothing in comparison to the smell this inmate had going on. Once we were done giving out the medicine, I went up to the officer training me and asked him what was going on with that inmate and why he smelled so god awful. He said, "Oh, you met Grady. He shits and pisses himself on purpose. He never changes or showers, so he constantly lives in his own filth. I found out that he was raped once in prison. So he started shitting and pissing himself so he wouldn't be raped anymore." Edit, this was at a jail I worked at. I guess I should have specified that at the beginning. The other officers told me that he was raped while he was previously in prison. I don't know why he was in jail when I was there, but the officers said he was a convicted child molester, so I'm assuming it pertained to that. He did have his own room, he was in the medical ward. He was in the safest place he could be at the time. The medical ward was for people that have medical issues, drug detoxation and psychiatric issues. They're separated from the general population. Every now and then they would make him take showers. The inmate workforce would have to wear hazmat suits to clean his room while he was taking a shower, so it wasn't just him that smelled, his whole living quarter smelled. Even though he was forced to take showers, he would continue to use the bathroom on himself. There's no excuse for child molestation, but I felt bad for him in a sense because he talked like a little kid. Like when a child has a speech impediment and they'll say wabbit instead of rabbit. He definitely seemed to have development issues. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you have enjoyed this video and subscribe to never miss an upload.